and then forward to reception.
All right, guys, I wanted to come back down and re-explain the leasing option to you because I understand you had some questions about it, right? And some concerns, I think, as well about being restricted.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, since I'm, you know, one of the reasons I love, you know, leasing is because it actually gives you a lot of options and flexibility for the right kind of driver. So I want to go over the benefits with you, explain kind of the scenario, and then again answer any questions. So I wanted to present to you three scenarios to you. I want to show you again a conventional loan, a traditional financing option. Then I want to show you a couple of different lease packages, one with a 12,000 mile, one with a 15,000 mile to give you that added buffer. Okay, so I can kind of show you both ways, and you can see how the math works. So all right, so first of all, let me start with the traditional. Under a traditional loan, as you can see here in this scenario, financing this vehicle, which you selected the 45,901 list price there on the 2015. So with that being the value price, everything staying the same on the deal that we're giving you. As you can see with this scenario here, on a 2,000 initial investment, 2,500 initial, and 3,000 initial investment, your monthly investments from 60 to 75 months are anywhere from 907 to 763, depending on the term that you go and what you're looking for, you know, there. Now that's a traditional finance. You're committed in this point for 60, 72, or 75 months.
Right.
What leasing really does, in essence, is leasing guarantees your future value of the car and protects your investment. So what happens is, in this case, the bank is actually promising you the car will be worth a certain amount of money. Because you have a written guarantee from the bank, what that does is it eliminates a huge portion of your risk whenever you buy a car, especially if you do one on longer term. And what that happens when you do that is basically, if this is the total value of the car, when you do a traditional finance, you're guaranteeing the whole thing. You're saying, I want a loan on that whole amount. When you do a lease, what you're saying is the bank is saying, well, what we're going to do is we're going to guarantee this much of the value. So you're only responsible to pay for the difference or the portion there that you're saying this is the part you'll take on. They're guaranteeing this other portion. Now, when that happens, typically what happens is you're financing a shorter term and you're financing less money, or obligation is for less money. Because of that, your payments typically end up being less. And in this case, you can see on a 36, 42, or 48 month, but even going as low as 36 months. So that's half the term as some of these other ones are, and your payment with less money is only $744. So you can see that, you know, in this case here, if you went twice as long and did more money down, you're at $926. But here on half the agreement, you're at $744 with less money down. The reason why is because you're not responsible for the full value of the vehicle. You're only responsible for the difference between what they guarantee and what you've bought. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, let me show you another thing. Here is a 12,000 mile option. This was a 15,000 mile option. Now, again, the average driver in America right now is doing somewhere around 13,000 miles a year. That's a normal driver, depending on, again, where you live and, you know, what your normal, you know, everybody's gonna be a little bit lower or higher than that. If you're 12,000 miles and you know that you are, then we would recommend that you start with a 12,000 mile because you're only, again, guaranteeing the usage that you're looking to get. If you go over on miles beyond a 12,000, you will have an attached premium per mile that you'll pay. But that intimidates people, but it really shouldn't, because again, it's guaranteed. See, if you were to buy a car, traditional buy a car, right? And then you were to drive the car for 10,000 miles a year, or 12,000 miles a year, or 15,000 miles, whatever you drive, every mile that you put on any car that you buy is going to depreciate the vehicle and lower the value of the car, correct?
Right.
There's a difference between a car with 50,000 miles and a car with 30,000 miles, right? One's going to be worth less. So when you do it a traditional way, you're going to pay per mile anyway, but here it's built in. So it's a fixed amount. You can't get overly charged for it based on the market. In this case, the bank guarantees in advance your risk. There's no risk doing it this way, whereas with the traditional finance, you're taking all the risk. That's why almost 80% of people in the automotive industry, the reason almost 80% of people in the car business do leasing is because they understand that this is the lowest risk, most flexible way of doing business on a car. So I wanted to kind of go over that with you. And also, do you have a pen handy? I'll show you another kind of a picture that helps you understand what I mean. So take a look at this real quick. A long time ago, couple years back, the housing market went nuts. And I don't know, I owned a house during that time. I don't know if you knew anybody who owned a house, but essentially housing prices were here and then they went, right? And the economy went crazy and everything went crazy. Banks bailed out, businesses shut down. It was a really kind of crazy time, right? Back around 2008, 2009. So here's my question to you. Imagine for a moment that you had a time machine and you went back to that time. And you were looking at buying a house for $250,000. That's the house you were looking at, you were really excited about. But you knew that the housing bubble was about to happen. You knew the crash was about to happen. And that same house would only be worth $125 in a month. You know what I'm saying? If you knew that, Trevon, let me ask you this. Would you pay full price and write a check for it, knowing it's going to do that? Would you finance it over a traditional finance 30 years, knowing it's going to do that? Or would you try to do a lease to own option where you're only making a payment or two? Then if this drops, you get to buy it at the lower value instead of at the top value. What would you do?
But that's if I know that it's
If you knew it was going to happen, what would you do?
If I knew that it was going to do it, then I would lease it.
Absolutely,
But
right?
what's the chance of it doing that?
Here's the chance. What's the difference between that house and the car you're looking at now? See, what you just said is exactly right. If you knew the value of it was going to go down, the smart thing would be to secure and hedge your bets and lease. A house is supposed to go up. It's supposed to, but they didn't. And if you had a crystal ball, you could have got rich, right? But you didn't know that. But see, a car, when you buy the car and drive it off the lot, do you expect it to go up?
No.
You expect it to do what?
No doubt.
Exactly, and what you just said is 100% right, and that's why people lease. That's why most businesses lease. That's why most business owners lease. Because what you just said is true. If you knew it was going to go down, you would protect your bet and hedge your bets, and especially if you knew that in a couple of years, your taste would probably change, or your lifestyle might change. You wouldn't necessarily, if you could do it, you wouldn't necessarily put yourself in a position of a longer term 75-month commitment. You wouldn't necessarily do that if you knew that your temperament, your personality, your needs, your lifestyle might change in 3 years. You would protect your investment and you would hedge your bets. So that's why I've leased the last 7 vehicles that I've leased, because somebody explained this to me. Before that, I was always buying cars and then trading out of them every 3 years and rolling over negative equity. You've heard that term before, negative equity, right? The reason why people have negative equity is because they take a loan beyond how long they keep the car for, and then they try to trade out of it and they have to roll that in and roll that in, and it ends up stacking up into the multiple thousands of dollars. Instead, what they could have and should have done, had somebody educated them and given the opportunity, is they should have been explained the benefits of a lease. Now, if you go 12,000 miles and get a lower payment, your payment comes in with the 3,000 you initially said. Your payment comes in anywhere from 36, 42, or 48 months, as low as 644. On a car like that, that's a beast payment. That's insane. That's a sexy payment on a sexy car. So if you can swing that, then if you have, for example, let's say instead of 12,000 miles, let's say you do 12,500. If that's what you end up doing, those 500 miles are again factored in at a guaranteed rate. So you don't have to worry about the added depreciation of the marketplace. It's still locked in. That means when you go to turn it in, all we do is the same way we're taking care of you now. We take that amount and we help you transfer that over to another car, and we start you all over again, clean slate. Versus taking all the risk, versus being somebody who bought a house in 2008 and then in 2009 went, "Dear Jesus, what did I do?" Because that's what happened. You know what I mean? So is that making sense to you? Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Just curious, on this particular vehicle, if you were to do these options here, what would you probably do? Again, how do you feel about the car? Do you feel like it's a car you'd keep for 3 years, 3.5, or 4 years? How long do you feel like you'd keep it for? How long did you keep your Grand Prix?
I kept it for 5.5 years.
And how did that feel to you? Were you happy with it?
I said it would have been longer.
It would have been longer.
I was going to say, it would have been longer?
Yeah, I wouldn't be here today.
Because you loved it.
Yeah.
So if you had the choice to upgrade it, right? Would you have upgraded it? Did you have the same flexibility you do now to were you at a different stage in your life?
Yeah. I don't think I would have upgraded. I would have kept it.
You loved it that much?
I like it.
How much do you like the Genesis?
I like it. Like it's at my top choice.
It's a premier choice.
Mm-hmm. So, and like I was telling Jeff, I'm working my way down with it. So it's like, this is top. I'm going down.
Okay.
But none of them compares to my first car.
I know.
So.
Sure. So here's a question for you. If you were, and this is the other thing, my wife did this on one of her leases. If you were at the end of your 36 months, if you were to say, this car is the bomb diggity, I love my car. I don't want another one. I don't want to replace it. I don't want I'm not worried about the new technology. This is my car. At the end of 3 years, in this case, at the end of 3, you have options. Again, leasing is all about options. It's not about limitations, it's about options. At that point, you have a couple of options. Number one, if the value of the vehicle exceeds the current market value, you have equity guaranteed. You can use that to then, if you wanted to, trade it towards the newer model with the newer technology. If you wanted to, you could do that. You have option number one, trade it in. Option number two, if you wanted to sell it, let's say, for example, you decided, because I see you're a Delta, you're in the airlines, right? You travel?
Yeah.
Let's say you decided, that's it, I've met somebody and I want to move to Italy, whatever. You decide you want to sell the vehicle, right? You can sell it, once again, if you have equity in it, you can sell it and cash out of the vehicle and actually get a check. Okay, that's an option. Option number three that you could do at the end of the lease, what you could do is you could say, I want to buy it. I love this car so much, I just want to keep it. At that point, you could go through a traditional finance. At that point, you could go, again, if you're planning on keeping it for a longer term, you could get a longer term note that you're comfortable with, stretch it out, and have super low payments on a fantastic vehicle that you love and that you know the car because it was your car. So you have the buy it option. And number four is you have the turn it in option. At the end of the lease, you could just say, I'm gonna, like I said, move across, the world, or I'm gonna, go green and ride bicycles everywhere, or whatever you decide to do. You can just turn it in and drop off the keys and you're done. Only in leasing do you have this variety of options given to you. So it's a no-brainer if you can, two things. If you love the car and you can swing the payment, which again, comparing a traditional to that, I mean, there's a $100 swing just in the difference in miles. If you go 12,000 versus 15, there's a $100 swing there. And then obviously if you go the traditional financing. Is that making sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah. Based on that explanation of leasing, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? What's your comfort level with leasing now compared to before I showed you that?
My comfort level is probably like at maybe like a 7.5, 8.
What was it before I showed you any of this?
It's about like just halfway.
Okay.
5, yeah.
So I moved you to an 8?
Yeah.
Yeah? Would you rather have the dream car and do something like a lease on it and get the lower payment, or would you rather maybe look at an alternative vehicle? You said you kind of considered moving down, right? What would be the right play?
Right now, I'll probably look at an alternative vehicle. Just keep shopping and keep looking and keep this in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the main reason you would consider doing that? Because if I understand correctly, and again, I'm just looking at what was given to me, but I was told that this is available funds today, the 3,000. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's the correct number. So that being put in, obviously, the scenarios that we have here range from as low as the lowest option is 595. That's based on 4. But if you just go based on 3, it's 618 all the way up to 907, right? That's a ridiculously high payment. That's huge. Congratulations if you can swing that, right? You're living the good life.
Right.
But basically between here and here, is your objective to find a vehicle that can get you lower than that, or to find an alternative vehicle that's in that same?
Around here or lower.
Okay.
Yeah. I just don't want to exhaust myself.
Right.
And I keep saying that, but that's
your concern?
That's the concern. So,
yeah. So to clarify what you mean by that, if you were able to get your dream car and it's $3,000 initial investment and your payment is in this range, What's the reservation at that point if it's your dream car and you can swing the payment and swing the down?
Just how big of a dream it is.
Do you feel like you're not ready for it yet? You're not at the stage where you deserve it, or you're prepared for it, or which one is it?
No, I mean, this would be the best chance to do it right now.
Oh, you're not kidding me, man.
But
We have executives who come in who because of all their overhead, because they have houses and kids and all this other stuff, they can't swing a car like this because they got too much overhead in their life. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't have that kind of overhead in your life, this is one of your best chances to get a dream car like this. Because once you acquire overhead, right? Little munchkins, right? They're expensive. All of a sudden your dreams go on a shelf for a couple years, huh? Dad, how long do dreams go on a shelf for sometimes?